So this afternoon then, I'm going to go into a little more detail about the smaller parts, sort of the way that people traditionally think of organizing your team's arguments, the whole concept of argumentation, and give you more chances to practice also. So it's sort of going to be similar to what we did in the morning, but going into more detail, basically. I'm going to start out talking about basic speech structure, just public speaking, but relating it to debate, and then arguments and argumentation, and finally making a complete case. And that's, if you can do this, that sort of will bring you up to a semi-professional level anyway as a debater. Making a complete case is sometimes hard. Like, it's easy to come up with one idea or another idea, but fitting it all together and making it sound persuasive is sometimes hard. So that's what this is about anyway. So basic speech structure, it's not so complicated. It's sort of like an essay also, right? You have an introduction, and then you have something called signposting, and then you have arguments, and then you have a conclusion. I'm going to give you a handout with all this on it, but for now, just you can pay attention. If you want to take notes, feel free to take notes, but you don't have to, probably. What is signposting? Anybody know? Numbering. Numbering. I got it. Yeah, that's right. Explain a little more.
To show our argument essence.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. If you're walking down a street, right, and you see a street sign that tells you, like, Ito campus this way or Tenjin this way, right? Sitting on a post, literally signposting. So in your debate, if you number your arguments, if you remind people of what your arguments were, that's called signposting. In any kind of speech, it's important, because if you don't signpost, your listeners will have trouble following you. If it's a piece of writing, signposting is also important, but in speech it's even more important, because people have to listen, they don't have a piece of paper in front of them all the time. So introduction, signposting, arguments, conclusion, that's the general structure of any speech. Now, I didn't really plan this into the lecture, but I think just to demonstrate this point, there's a good fun game to play. Maybe some of the ESS members have already done this, because this idea I got from Jonathan Borick. You guys know Jonathan, right? Jonathan is very strange, but he's a genius. So never underestimate Jonathan. So maybe you guys did this with him sometime, but the rest of you guys, you didn't. So this is, and it's a good way to demonstrate, like introduction, signposting, arguments, conclusion. It's the island survival. Well, we're going to do this. This is before I even get into the lecture on the slides, because this is sort of light and fun. You don't have to worry about coming up with very sophisticated political arguments or social arguments. It's easier, but it's a way of demonstrating the way the speech works. So here's how the story goes. We're all on an island, a nice island with palm trees, coconuts, nice beach, beautiful waves in the ocean, no sharks. It's a beautiful island. But there's one problem. In the middle of the island, there's a volcano. Did you do this? No? Okay, well, it's a good story anyway. In the middle of the island, there's a volcano. And one day, the volcano starts erupting. And so we realize, oh no, we're going to have to leave our island. It's going to be covered in volcanic lava. We're all going to die if we stay here. So, we get our boat. And we get ready to go. But there's a problem. Can you guess?
Yes.
What's the problem?
The limit of writing people.
Right, there's a limit. You did this before, right? With Jonathan?
No.
No, but okay, there's a limit. Because it's such a beautiful island, no one would want to leave. We didn't prepare. Our boat is too small. Our boat can only fit, let's see how many people are here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, wait, I lost count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 23. Okay. So, Professor Inoue, do you want to be included?
No.
No, only 20, okay. There are 23 of us, except we're going to make 2 groups. So, and without me, it's 22. So 11 and 11. Our boat can only fit 10 people, but there are 11 of us. This is the problem. So somebody's going to have to stay behind and sacrifice her or himself for the good of the community. And we have to decide, who will we sacrifice? And of course everyone runs and says, please sacrifice me. No, the opposite. Everyone runs and says, please don't sacrifice me. Right? So I'm going to give each of you like some kind of identifying feature, like a job or something about you. And you have to make a speech saying why you should be on this boat. Okay? That's your job. You have to make a speech saying why you should be on this boat. Your speech should have an introduction. It should have a signpost. Like 2 reasons why you should not leave me behind on the island. And then you should give your arguments. Argument 1, argument 2. And then finally you should have some kind of conclusion. Okay? So that's how this is going to work. So, okay, you are a farmer in group 1. Okay? You are also in group 1. Group 1, you are an actor. I am, somebody give me a job. I can't give myself a job, that's not fair. I am a gangster, okay. All right, there we go. All right, so write down, like, keep track. I'll write it on my hand here, gangster. Anyway, write down your job or your whatever it is you do, and you have 5 minutes to think of 2 reasons, an introduction, and 2 reasons why you should be on that boat, and then think of your arguments. So it's very similar to the 1-minute debate, but it's sort of on a fun topic, a light topic. And stop. 4-minute speech maximum, but it doesn't. There's no minimum, as long as you go through the steps. So the very simple speech would be like I am a cat. And cats are nice, so you should take me. I have 2 reasons why I'm so nice. One is I'm fluffy. And the other one is I have big, pretty eyes. So let me explain my first reason about fluffiness. Everybody knows that petting an animal makes you feel really relaxed and calm. And so it will calm everyone down in such an emergency crisis situation. So that's why fluffiness is such a good quality. And second, big pretty eyes. Well, you know, of course, that if you look into somebody's eyes, and then you can see your own soul. So if you ever wonder why you're in this boat, you'll be able to look into my cat eyes, and you'll know why you're there. And in conclusion, not everybody has to be useful. Sometimes just being nice is a good thing too. Please take the cat. Thank you. That's a minimum speech, right? Something like that. That was maybe 1 minute?
Well, how about that?
A minute and a half? I don't know. Anyway, like you can do something really simple if you want. It's okay. I had something longer for the gangster. But, okay, so anyway, who do you want to hear? Or should I flip a coin? It is...
Hello, everybody. I'm a hairdresser, and I have 2 very strong reasons why I should be here. One is health, life and health. The second is quality of life, quality of life. Let me give an explanation of those 2 reasons. The first one, health and life, even life. If your hair is dirty, messy, that becomes a hygienic thing. And contaminations and the germs will develop. Then you get sick, and your disease not only damage your health, but even life sometimes. And also, that disease will spread to the other survivors. So, hairdresser's job is keep your hair clean. And my responsibility is to make sure that you keep your hair clean, and if you need help, I will help you. The second reason is quality of life, beauty. Even if you are just healthy and survive, that's not enough. You want to do some kind of enjoyment. You want to look at beautiful hair. You want to sometimes change your hair to make you look better. Even in a boat, in the remote place, you want some enjoyment, and that will motivate people. And your beautiful hair will motivate other people. So in order to keep high spirit for all of us to survive, hairdresser's job is important. Maybe you can do it yourself, but I can help you to improve. So for health and life, and also for quality of life, you need me, hairdresser. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know I am a bad man. The tattoos which I have engraved upon my body are the records of innumerable crimes. I have hurt you. I have hurt our society. I am deeply sorry. But I am here to appeal to you. Please do not leave me behind, because I can help us survive. Right now, we need to forget the past. Our old home is about to disappear and be burnt alive. We need to think about the future. And it's a future that I think I can help us live together in a better way. I have three main reasons why I can help you. First, most importantly, loyalty. Second, practicality. And finally, third, fighting skill. I'll talk about the first reason. As you know, gangsters are all extremely loyal. We follow our bosses to the end, and any member of our gang, if they're in trouble, we will sacrifice our own life to help you. Well, when we leave the island, you're my gang. We're going to a strange place. I have nobody but you. I will be loyal to you to the death, I promise. I will tattoo every one of your names into my arm to prove it. My second argument, practicality. As you know, because gangsters do not always follow the law, we can adapt very well to any kind of situation. So as we sail this boat, who knows what will happen? I think I'm a very practical person, and I will be there to help you as a member of your gang. Finally, good at fighting. Again, we don't know what we're going to encounter. There could be savage monsters. There could be people like Koreans, Chinese, Americans, or people from other countries out there. I'm very afraid of foreigners, and maybe you are too. So if we need to fight, I'll be there and ready to fight for you. So, please, let me join your gang. Take me on the boat. Thank you very much. I don't need a hairdresser personally. Most of you guys do. Okay, we actually, Professor Inoue and I decided that if we do 2 big groups, it'll take too long, so we're going to make you into 4 smaller groups with 5 or 6 each, okay? So in your 4 groups, you do the same thing. Everybody comes up and gives a speech, and then group members all vote. And whoever gets the most votes for being out is out. Although if everybody, like if you vote for her, and you vote for her, and you vote for him, and then if everybody votes for one other person, then I guess nobody's out. The vote sinks, you all die. Something like that, okay? Okay, everybody's decided. All right, so congratulations to all the survivors. And I'm sorry for all the people who are left behind with me. Because before you all die, I'm going to beat you up and take your money. But anyway, congratulations, everybody. If you had signposting, that's the most important thing. So in this group in the back, I was working like the first couple of guys, I had to tell them, wait, stop, you didn't signpost. But then they got it, they really got it. And then they got the difference between signposting and making the argument. That's the most important thing. If you signpost, it's good for you, because in your own mind, you know, oh, this is what I'm going to talk about in my speech. If you just think like, oh, I should be on the boat, and it's just one big idea, you get lost in the middle of your own speech, right? If you're talking for more than a minute. But if you have different reasons, it helps you make a longer speech, a better speech. You can explain more. So that's really the important thing. To be a good debater, you have to have clear organization as well as good ideas, both. And so that was sort of a fun way to introduce it. Now I have a more serious way here on the slides. Just sort of talking about how this works in an actual debate. And I think these two teams did a pretty good job, again, especially government team in the debate on a nuclear bomb. They were very, very clear in their vision and in their introduction and their stance. So this is how you say it. Let's read all together. Oops, sorry. In the introduction part of your speech in a debate, this is what you talk about. A, status quo, which means the situation now. And B, the principle or vision you support. And then C, how the motion connects to your vision. So this was an example I made up, but it's not very different. It's a little bit similar to theirs. Let's read together. Go. With North Korea announcing a new series of missile and bomb tests, and with China building up its navy, Japan's position in Northeast Asia is getting much more dangerous. In this situation, we believe the Japanese people deserve protection from their government. And that's why we propose the motion that Japan should possess a nuclear bomb. Okay, so first part is status quo. This is the situation, why this motion is important. And second, our principle, protection. And third, how the motion is connected. That's very similar to what you guys did in your debate. And it worked pretty well for you. Okay, and then signposting section. So all together, signposting is outlining your main arguments. For example, we have two reasons why possessing a nuclear bomb will add to our security. One, the first argument is that it will be a direct deterrent to war. Two, the second argument is that it will make other countries take us more seriously, even in non-military situations. Actually, this is also really similar to their arguments, right? First, it'll protect us. Second, it'll make the US and us equal. And there's a third reason. We also think possessing a nuclear weapon will have an additional benefit. It will improve our national pride. So that could be a third argument, maybe. Okay, and then how to say it, your arguments. So this, I couldn't write out everything because the arguments part takes a long time, right? Nobody spoke less than like 6 minutes and 40 seconds in this debate. So making the argument actually takes time. But in brief, like the arguments all together, make them one at a time and add explanations and examples. For example, let me explain our first argument, the deterrent effect of nuclear weapons. And as an example. Can anybody think of an example? Like one thing that really hurt the government in this debate is opposition says, but nobody ever used a nuclear weapon. It has no real effect, right? So can you think of an example where having a nuclear weapon did help anybody? Okay, that could work, right? No country has ever been, but there's only been one country ever been attacked by an atomic bomb. So that's a little bit, but that's true. No country with an atomic bomb has ever been attacked with another atomic bomb. Extend that idea into something a little bit more. It's a very common argument, actually. People make this a lot. Why does Kim Jong-il have a nuclear bomb in North Korea? Because he wants to attack somebody? No. Right, he wants to make sure nobody attacks him. So he's very afraid, right? The US or some other country like that. In Iraq, did Saddam Hussein have a nuclear bomb? No, and the US attacked him, right? like that. And like now, so people think maybe if I have a nuclear bomb, if he really had a nuclear bomb, they wouldn't have attacked him, right? That kind of thing. It's not certain because we don't really know, but that's an argument people make a lot. Like one reason North Korea has nuclear weapons is because they're afraid of being attacked by a big country, by a big power. So it helps defend a smaller country against a bigger country sometimes. The bigger country, sure, maybe they could win the war, but they wouldn't want the damage of the nuclear attack. So they just decide it's not worth the war. So that might be an example, right? That could have helped this team maybe show, like, Japan is a small country. It's got China. If the US leaves, maybe it will have to fight the US, Russia, right? Maybe South Korea even, who knows, North Korea. Maybe that could help them. And our second argument, and then you explain, right? You explain more. Okay, and then finally, conclusion. Together, go. Link your ideas together and remind listeners of your vision. So this is how the conclusion can work. It can sort of remind people of why this is important, why it's important to vote for your team. So, for example, go. In conclusion, of a strong nation, so that's sort of how you can end the speech. Or you can just say, so we're proud to support this motion, or something like that. It depends. If you're running out of time, if it's past 7 minutes, just say something really short. So we support this motion. If you have extra time, you can say something like this, like, we in the government team stand for a proud and independent Japan. That's another thing you could have done as an example. In history, right, no country really can ever rely on another country to defend it. So, you know, in history, for example, Korea, this is something that Koreans really think. Like, Korea relied on first China, against Japan, right? Japan ended up sort of conquering Korea. Not conquering exactly, but forcing it into a treaty and taking over. But they first tried to rely on China, but then China lost the war against Japan, and then they tried to rely on Russia. Russia lost the war against Japan. Then they tried to rely on the United States, but the United States signed a secret treaty with Japan. Right? Ito Hirobumi and President, I think it was Roosevelt, but it might have been Theodore Roosevelt, I think. It might have been Taft. Anyway, like one of those presidents in the US, they signed a secret treaty. Oh, no, it wasn't Hirobumi. It wasn't Ito Hirobumi. It was Kimura, somebody. Anyway, it was the Taft-Kimura Treaty. It was Taft. So I know my Korean history, right? Because I'm from Korea. So Korea was relying on the United States to represent Korea as an independent nation. But instead, the United States signed the treaty saying, okay, if Japan does not oppose United States taking the Philippines, then United States will not oppose Japan taking Korea. And that's what happened. The Koreans were all upset, but it happened anyway. So things like that, you can use examples to show why this is very important that a country is independent. Anyway, right, and in your conclusion, you can remind people. Okay? Let's practice. Another 2-minute speech. Actually, let's skip this practice, because you already just did the practice with the island. And so, anyway, I was going to have you take 5 minutes and prepare a speech rather than doing the one on the island, but instead doing a more serious one about this. This house would turn off the air conditioning. This house would, or THW, turn off the air conditioning. Instead of having you do this as a speech, let's just brainstorm a little bit together about some reasons. If you're in the side of government, why would you want to turn off the air conditioning? Actually, today, it's a cold day, but if it's a hot day, still, why turn off the air conditioning? What's one possible reason?
Save electricity.
Okay. Save electricity. What's another possible reason?
Global warming.
Okay. Help stop global warming. Any other reasons? Yes? Keep healthy. right? Don't they say that like if you have air conditioning, it's like bad for your breathing and yeah, and also if you stay too cool and then go outside. Yeah, good. Any other reasons? Okay, well that's our case, right? We brainstormed, we did that really fast. We did that like in 2 minutes or less. So if you have 20 minutes to prepare for your debate, then you start thinking of the arguments. You start thinking, how am I going to say that? And how many speakers do you have on your team? How many people speaking on your team? 2, right? So the other thing you do is you sort of divide it up. There are 3 arguments, you divide them among 2 speakers. Which 2 do you think should go together? Which 2 should the first speaker handle? And which one should the second speaker handle? Or which one should the first speaker handle? And which 2 should the second speaker handle? What do you think?
1, 2 is strong argument, so
Oh.
First speaker should.
Okay, so these 2 sort of go together. First speaker, and then that one's the second speaker. Makes sense to me, yeah. And these 2 are related, right? If you save electricity, that also, it's very closely related. If you want to, you can reverse. The first speaker could talk about this one, if you think that's a better argument. It depends on what you know, partly, right? If you know a lot about the bad health effects of air conditioning. Okay, and right, so there's our case. Okay, and then, but you have to think. You have to think of how am I going to explain this? Can I think of any examples? Are there any places like countries where they have a law about limiting air conditioning or something like that? You can think of things like that to add to your arguments. Okay, so that's the next topic then, is making persuasive arguments. And pretty much you know, it's better to make a more detailed argument than a shorter argument usually, right? If it's a not important argument, yes, maybe you can make a short one. But if it's an important argument, you need to make more detail. So this is a way of remembering it. A-R-E. It's like the English word are. Before we get into ARE, here's just some key vocabulary. Arguments are the reasons why you support or oppose a certain plan or a belief. Your case is the complete set of arguments you use in the debate. And then argumentation is the process of support and explanation to show why your arguments make sense. That is what you actually say about the arguments. So, good arguments have 3 parts, according to this model. Here's an example. Let's read the motion. Ready? Go. T is what? This. House. Would. Ban. Cell phones in school. Do any schools do that in Japan? No? Yes? In China you do? In college or high school or where? In high school? Mm.
In the campus, it's not okay.
Oh, really?
Especially in the classroom, it's not okay.
In the classroom, it's not okay.
Playground, maybe.
Yeah, okay. How about college? No? They allow in college? In Japan, too? Yeah. I think in Korea, usually they allow cell phones in school. Is that right, you guys? Or do high schools ban them? Oh, not allow? They ban cell phones in school? I know in America some schools ban cell phones. It's a rule. Like you have to leave your cell phone in your locker. You can't carry it around in school. So, yeah, okay. So that's the example. And here's an assertion, the A part. Assertion means your supporting point. It's like your signpost. So let's read that together. Ready, go. Cell phones distract students from studying. Okay, maybe everybody believes that, but it's not enough, right? You need more. That's the R and the E part. What's the R? The reasoning, the reason, the explanation of how and why. Let's read that. Ready? Go. When cell phones ring, they make a loud noise which interrupts the lesson. Even cell phones in vibration mode make a loud buzzing sound if they're sitting on desks, right? Yeah. Okay, makes sense, right?
Right.
So if you just say this much, that's not very persuasive. If you say this much, it's more persuasive. But you're still not done. What's the missing part? Evidence. Examples or official research. So, go. Cell phones have been banned for drivers because studies show that traffic accidents happen most often not when the driver is talking on the phone, but when the driver is distracted by the phone ringing and tries to answer. Okay, that's even more complete, right? And then you could even make it more complete than that. So that's why ringing cell phones is distracting, and that's why they should be banned. Notice that argument could be rebutted. So rebuttal is when you try to defeat the other team's arguments. If you listen to the debate, right, each speaker after the first one said, okay, I'm going to rebut their points. My first rebuttal is, my second rebuttal is. So it's good to signpost your rebuttals also. I have two rebuttals, one to their point about defense, and a second one to their point about equal power. Something like that. What about defense? Well, we know we don't need nuclear weapons for defense because, and then explain, right? So in rebuttal, the assertion is cell phones distract students from studying. Here's the rebuttal. Assertion. Go. The distraction of a cell phone ringing in a classroom is not very big. Sounds good? A lot of debaters stop right here. They don't do this part. They just stop there. They say, they said that cell phones are distracting, but the distraction's not very big. So we don't think it's a problem. That's too short, though. You need to add more, even when you're rebutting the other team. So reasoning. Go. A classroom is not like driving a car, where even 1 second of distraction is dangerous. We didn't see any decrease in test scores in our school compared to 10 years ago before there were cell phones. So that shows they can't be very distracting, right? So something like that. If you're rebutting or if you're making a constructive argument, if you're making the argument in favor of your side or rebutting the other side, try to make it more detailed. Try to explain. Try to give evidence. Try to give examples. Note, a good debate case has 2 to 4 main arguments for each team. So that's something we already found out when we did this one about the turning off the air conditioning, right? But here too, like, for example, this house would ban cell phones in schools. Main assertions for the government: 1, they distract students from studying. 2, they cost too much money. 3, fancy cell phones make poor students feel ashamed. So those are all reasons why cell phones are bad, and we shouldn't ban, or we shouldn't have them in high school, maybe, right? Main assertions for opposition could be having a cell phone is a basic right of a student as a member of society, and cell phones have functions like dictionaries that help students study better, and cell phones can be important in emergencies, something like that. So each team should have several arguments. And there's one other thing, L. A-R-E-L, actually. It's not so easy to remember, but R plus L. The L means extra linking, back to the motion you're trying to support or defeat. So if you go back to this first one for the government team, cell phones distract students. When cell phones ring, they make a loud noise which interrupts the lesson. Even cell phones in vibration mode make a loud buzzing sound if they're sitting on desks. Cell phones have been banned for drivers because studies show that traffic accidents happen most often not when the driver is talking on the phone, but when the driver is distracted by the phone ringing and tries to answer. Linking. This evidence shows how distracting cell phones can be. But just like the drivers who keep having accidents, people won't voluntarily leave their own cell phones at home for everyone else's good, so we need to pass a ban on cell phones to get rid of these distractions. Right? Now you've really connected your argument to the motion itself, which is ban cell phones. So that's a really complete argumentation. It doesn't mean you're going to win the point, because the other team could come up and say, no, but a classroom is not like driving a car. So your argument, it's a very trivial argument. The distraction of a cell phone ringing, it only happens rarely, it only happens a little bit. We don't see any evidence that it's really hurting our learning. Our test scores haven't go down. There's no guarantee that any complete argument will win the debate. But a complete argument is more convincing than just a signpost, than just an assertion or a claim, right? So you need to do a little bit more. Signposting is step one, but then you need to actually make the complete argument. Okay? And then this is how you get judged in an actual tournament on your speech. There are sort of three things that the judge thinks about. One is the content, the matter, and that includes like all the reasoning and the examples you give. One is the organization, the method, that includes how clear your speech is. Did you signpost? Did you stick to your team plan that your other speaker announced? Things like that. And then delivery, your manner, your style. Did you sound confident? Did you sound like you really cared about the topic? Did you tell an interesting joke that made the other team sound like they had a really silly idea that made your team sound good and make them look bad, right? Things like that. So those are the three things judges will consider if they judge your speech in a tournament. In terms of scoring, most tournaments are like this. Like it's between 70 and 80 points, and an average speech is about 75, and so on. Like you don't really need to know that, but just if you're wondering, like, so how do these tournaments work? And how do all these things we're studying fit together? That's how that works. Okay, speech practice. I'm going to give you a motion. I'm going to make you practice again with a partner, just like you did for the 1-minute debates. But this time, I want you to give a longer speech. I want you to have a 2 to 3 minute speech with at least 2 good arguments. So more like what you did with the island and the boat. But this time it's for and against. It's a more serious topic, a debate topic, okay? Everybody find a partner right now. You've got a partner. Now decide who's for and who's against. You don't even know what the motion is at all this time. It's going to be a surprise. Maybe the motion is this house would eat an egg. What I do actually, when I'm preparing for a debate, what I do is I take a piece of paper and I actually think about both sides. So I take my paper like this and I make a line down the middle. For, against, like that. But then I put a star next to the side I am so I don't forget. Like if I'm for, I go like that. And then if I think of an idea here against, I'll write it here. And if I think of an idea for, I'll write it here. But that way I can prepare for what the other side is thinking also. So remember your side. You have to think of some arguments for or against, depending on your side, okay? All right, we did step 1. Step 2, let's read together. Ready? Go. You have 10 minutes to prepare. Think of at least 2 good arguments and some reasoning and evidence to back them up. Step 3, give a 2 to 3 minute speech to your partner. Then it's your partner's turn. So once again, just like the 1-minute debate, I'm going to time everybody. All the prime ministers start at the same time, and everybody should try to speak at least 2 minutes. At least 2 minutes. So it'll be start, and then after 2 minutes, I'll give 1 tap. And then after 3 minutes, I'll give 2 taps. So at 3 minutes, if you hear the 2 taps, then you should finish up. Say, finish your sentence, maybe add 1 more sentence. Don't say a lot. Just finish up. And then say, so that's why we strongly support this motion. Or so that's why we really need to do this plan. Or whatever you want to say like that, okay? All right. Ready for the motion?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Let's read it. Go. That homemakers should be paid a minimum wage by the government. So this house believes that homemakers should be paid a minimum wage by the government. Anybody who has a question about the meaning? What is a homemaker? That sounds like a good question. Who can explain?
Housewife.
Like a housewife or house husband?
House husband.
Or not a maid? No. People who do housework in whose house? Their own house. People who stay home and just take care of the home. They don't have any job outside the home. So yes, traditionally, it's a woman who's married to a man and is a housewife. But a homemaker could be a house husband. A homemaker could be a single person who just stays and takes care of the home. A single parent, maybe. It's possible. Okay, anyway, homemakers, people who just stay home and take care of their home. and their children, maybe, right? How about minimum wage? You know what that is? Like a salary, money. The government should pay some kind of salary, some kind of wage for homemakers, people who just stay home. That's the motion. All right. So you have did I say 10 minutes? You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes to make a case, to try and make a 2 to 3 minute speech. If everybody's finished before 10 minutes, we can start before. If you're having trouble, wave your hand. I'll come and help you. And stop. Okay, that's your preparation time. 10 minutes have expired. So, everybody stand up. Face your partner. Okay. Let's see what you guys got as far as arguments. So, let's see what you got. As far as pro arguments, what's one argument in favor of giving homemakers a minimum wage paid by the government? Okay? Increased marriages. Okay, what's another argument? Increased children. Okay, what's another argument? Oh, like a concrete reward. Okay, good. A concrete reward for work. Okay. What's another reason? Somebody else has one. Okay. Okay. Anybody else have other reasons? We can keep adding. Anybody else? Reasons for? Solve the job problem. Okay. You mean unemployment? Oh. Okay. Okay, any other reasons? Economic growth. Okay. Okay, against. Let's see what arguments we have. Labor shortage. Okay, that sounds like maybe there's a disagreement about what will happen. Okay, that's fine. Okay. Other arguments against. Cost. Okay. Any other problem? Any other arguments against? It will increase taxes. Okay, that's sort of related to this one maybe, but okay. Anything else? Hard to measure the level of housework. Okay, okay. Anything else? Yeah, okay, so it's sort of like abuse of the system, right? Fraud. Fraud. That's what you call it, fraud, if you lie in order to get money. Like, oh, I'm doing lots of housework. Pay me, pay me, pay me. And you're just sitting and watching TV all day at home or something, right? Okay. Any other reasons? Okay? Don't need it.
Right.
Okay, let's take a look then at how these things work out, and we can look for two things. First, we can look for clashes. Where are the things that are directly clashing? And then second, the other thing we can look for is what's the principle, or what's the vision, or what's the value behind that, right? Sometimes in debate, they call this a stance. Like, where do you stand on the issue? What's your vision, or what's your value that you think is important? And on this side too, although this is covered up, but I guess we can write it up here barely. It's sort of high, but your stance, vision, or value behind this, okay? And then the other thing is we can look for clashes. Let's look at clashes first. We already found one point that seems directly to clash. Like these two people just totally disagree about this point. Which one? About?
Joe?
Right. Is it going to make a labor shortage, or is it going to solve the unemployment problem? Is it going to be good and bad, or bad for jobs, right? Anything else? that directly clashes, or close to directly clashes? I think I see at least one more.
Don't need it.
Don't need it, and? Well, that's the people don't need it. The homemakers don't need it. It's a little bit different. But that clashes with something over here.
Independence?
Yeah. And I think this one too, right? To some extent. They do need it. That's what this is saying, right? This is saying they do need it, and this is saying they don't need it. And this is saying it will have positive effects on the labor, or negative effects on the labor market, and this is saying it'll have positive effects on the labor market. That it'll solve unemployment, but this is saying no, it'll be too far. Everyone will want to be a homemaker. Maybe this is somewhat related to this. Like people will just think, oh, this is easy money, right? So they won't go into other jobs. So there are a couple of clashes in this debate. One of these clashes is a principle, more like a principle, and one of them is more like a practical effect, right? Which one is a principle? More like a principle. Is it the labor one, or is it the need one? Need is more like a principle. It's like, what is a homemaker in our society? Is a homemaker somebody who is doing a lot of work but undervalued? Our society doesn't reward them for the work they do. Or is a homemaker just someone who basically maybe a few of them need money, but most of them, they have enough money from their husband or their family or something, so it doesn't matter, right? Do we need to somehow value them more highly or less highly? So this is how you sort of bring your arguments together. This is the one missing piece in the case. You have like different arguments, right? But the arguments should sort of be united by some vision. So I think in the government case, maybe the vision they can have, what's helpful for the government here, is in our society, there are some kinds of work we put high value on and some kinds of work we put low value on. That's wrong. Work is work. Everybody who works deserves to have pay for their work. Homemakers are one of the most neglected groups. They've contributed a lot to their families, to our society, but we don't reward them. We need to change that, right? That's our value. That's what we support in this debate. And then you can also say, and it has some other benefits, practical benefits. On opposition side, I think your value is a more practical one. It's like, oh, well, okay, maybe it's true, but this is an impossible system. People are going to take advantage of it. There's no way to measure it. There are just going to be people who don't need it taking money that are going to take away from our system. So this side, it's like a more practical approach, I think. But that's what unites it. It's like, okay, you guys, you're very idealistic. It would be nice, but we just can't do this. You could also have a principle. You could say, oh, there's no right in our society to get paid by the government. The government doesn't have an obligation to pay people, right? If you want to get paid, find someone who's willing to pay you. That's your responsibility, not the government's responsibility. So that could be another additional argument here on this side of things. Not the government's job.
Domestic.
Yeah. Employment for everybody is not the government's job, right? So you could say that too. But this is the one missing piece that is nice to add in our debate. It's sort of like in this debate. We want a future where we're independent. That's our principle. Even if there's no practical threat right now, we still want a future where we're independent. Maybe there will be a threat in the future. We need to prepare for that. On this side, I think they could have been, like you guys could have organized your case. Where are you on opposition? You two guys. You could have organized your case maybe if you had just realized that what's happening is they're being more idealistic, you guys are being more practical, and just say that, you know, right now atomic bombs, sorry, but this is like a really hot issue. It's not something you can just do something abstract on principle. You have to consider the reality. That could have sort of tied together all your pieces in a much more unified way, right? So that's the one thing that's missing, and that's called a stance usually. It's like your stance, your vision. So the last part of my lecture, and then we have just a little more practice, we have less than an hour left, right? So is this is how it sort of all fits together. And what I have it, I've just organized it by speech. But the really important parts of the debate are all sort of listed here. So this is like complete now. Not only everything you studied so far, but adding the last little thing, which is this stance or this vision. So you start out with some opening remarks in your speech, your introduction. That's where you set the context, you set the background. Like today's society, just like society through hundreds and thousands of years in history, men are on top, women are on the bottom. Men's work is valued very highly. Jobs that are traditionally men's jobs, like scientists and engineers and lawyers and politicians, get paid a lot. Jobs that are women's jobs, like caring for children, they only get paid a little. And if you care for children in your own home, you don't get paid anything. Is that right? No, it's wrong. That's what government stands for in this debate. We're going to change that. We're going to change our society, and we're going to give women what they deserve for staying at home. Or if a man wants to break the stereotype and stay at home and be a house husband or a single parent, they should get paid too. That's what we stand for in this debate. You set the context. So, the motion, right? Now this is a different motion, but anyway, in that debate, that's how you'd start. Set the context, then state the motion. This example, I chose a different example. Maybe I should have just stuck with the same example, but anyway. I have a different one. This house supports women's colleges. This is also a motion where it's sort of a principle of women's equality or women's rights. So, define the motion. This is something else that we've been missing. You guys were asking me about this, right? Like for the motion of homemakers. Is it just in Japan we're talking about, or where? Where are we talking about? So that can be important, right? Sometimes countries are different. In this case, this house supports women's colleges. THS. S is supports. Why would that word need to be defined? This house supports. If you support something, what does that mean? You encourage, you go and cheer for their debate team. That's supporting, right? Yeah, absolutely. Right? If you support your basketball team, right, you go and, like, I'm a supporter, I'm cheering for them. That's supporting, so that could be. Okay? Oh, just treat them the same. Okay. Maybe, like, get rid of some kind of discrimination. Okay? That could be supporting. Okay, anybody else then? How else could you support something?
Give a preference?
Like, what kind of preference? What do you mean? Explain.
Benefit.
What kind of benefit? That's just saying preference in a different way.
Money.
Money, okay, you can give them money, right? That would be supporting, right? How else can you support something? Yes?
This house believes that women's college is important.
Oh, well, you can just support them in theory, right? Like, I think they're important. That's sort of like what Inoue was saying, like encourage them, right? So there are lots of ways to support, right? You can support with money, you can support with encouragement, you can support with a special regulation to like give them like a better chance of getting a job, anything, right? There are lots of support. That's why the definition part is important. Also, yeah?
Give values for women's housework.
Okay, or in the other one, right, minimum wage. Like, what's minimum wage? But if it was a different motion, like this house supports homemakers, then you could say we give homemakers a minimum wage, or you could say we support homemakers by we should have an advertising campaign to encourage women to stay home and take care of the home, right? Very different. Yeah. So this one's women's colleges, so it's a little different. But anyway, the key is, like, if it's something that's not clear, you should also define it. That's another part of, it's another part of your background. It's another part of the introduction to your speech, where you explain more clearly.
The affirmative does the part.
Right. So this is first government speech, Prime Minister, the affirmative team. They have to explain more specifically. That means the negative team, the opposition team, they sort of have to be a little bit flexible. If you're planning, this house supports women's colleges, and you are planning like it's bad to donate money, but the government team doesn't say money, then you have to just say, oh, well, forget that argument, but we have some other arguments so why it's bad, so we'll use the other ones, right? Sometimes the opposition is stuck that way. Anyway, let's read the example. So after you give the motion, sometimes you have to define the motion. Let's read the example definition. Ready, go. This house is Korea, and by support women's colleges, we mean that we support the idea of women's colleges as a necessary part of Korean society. We want to have a values debate, not give a specific policy. So are they supporting with money? No. Are they supporting with encouragement? Yeah, maybe. They think it's good anyway. This house, sometimes you can define that. That was your question, right? Can we say it's Japan? Can we say it's the whole world? Can we say it's Korea? Yes, you can, but not in a way that's unfair. If I'm debating with 2 Korean guys on my team, or 1 Korean guy on my team, and my 2 opponents are Japanese, can I say it's Korea? No, not fair, right? If they are debating in their government and we're opposition, can you say it's Japan? No, that's not fair. If you're debating Chinese people against people from England, can you say China? Not usually. Although some things, China's a big enough country that people should know about some things in China. So, like, this house believes China should let Taiwan be independent. Then that's fair, because that's a big world issue, right? That's a big world issue. Or this house believes China should stop building its navy. That's a big world issue. But like this house believes China should support women's colleges. I don't think that's really fair. You have to. It's not an international issue that's in the newspapers, right? So you have to think about that a little bit. Anyway, instead of Korea, it could be Japan in your case. If you're debating other Japanese debaters, then that's fine. Okay? Then you give the stance. That is your value, what you believe in, your main line, and your split, which are your main supporting points, and then your arguments. If you thought of 6 points or 7 points, that's too many. So you have to sort of group them together. Like you can say, okay, these, and even this one, provoking people to share housework. Like these all relate to the value of valuing women's work. And then these, like solving unemployment problems and solving marriage and children problems and economic growth, these 2 relate. Economics, and these 2 relate population, and these relate in terms of women's roles. So you have 3 arguments. That it brings more equality between the sexes, first argument. Second argument, that it helps the economy. Third argument, that it also helps the aging population problem. 3. So same thing here with this one. You have 3 or 4 arguments, not too many arguments. Otherwise it gets really confusing. Here's some more specific examples. So here's a stance. Let's read together. Are you ready? Go. Women's colleges are necessary for Japanese society because they help women achieve equality. And your split, your main points. First, need for equality between the sexes. Second, how women's colleges produce women's leaders. And then, sorry, I needed to change this, but I forgot. Not DPM, but M, member of government. Second speaker's points. Second speaker's points are special research focus on women and encouraging message to young women. Okay? So you have 4 points. 4 is okay, 3 is okay, 2 is okay. 1 is not enough. You need 1 for your first speaker and 1 for your second speaker, at least. 5 is probably too many. 5 is maybe possible, but it starts getting confusing with 5. It's better to group them. Here too, we can group them into like problems with labor, cost and taxes are very similar. We can group those. And then don't need it, and fraud, and hard to measure, and it's not the government's job. All those sort of come all together in like, it's not really a practical, there's no practical way to do it. So you can group those too, right? And then you give your arguments. Okay, first opposition speech. First, go. Accept or challenge the definition and the context. Don't worry about definition challenges. It's something that you can do in the rules, but it doesn't happen very much, and as a beginner, not something you should probably worry about much, okay? So just accept, like, okay, we know this situation, unless it's totally wrong. If it's totally wrong, just say, oh, they explained that all wrong. Our society is not like that, right? And then second, give your team stance. For example, we think times have changed and women's colleges are now unnecessary for women's equality. Moreover, we think they have some bad side effects. Okay? Third, rebut or concede government's points. First, we agree that we need equality between the sexes. Second, but we think women's colleges don't produce better women's leaders. Because. Right? Question, which one of these is rebutting? One or two? Two. What's one doing? One is conceding. So if you remember, you can look back on your printout if you want. What was government's first point? For this, it's the beginning or the bottom of page 3. Last slide on page 3 in this slideshow. Government's first point was oh, sorry, it's the first slide. It doesn't have the points. It just has the definition on that one. Okay, sorry. Top of page 4, not bottom of page 3. Government's first point is. Government's first point was need, right? We need equality. Does opposition disagree? They don't disagree, they agree. Need, it's top of page 4, just the previous slide. I can go back if you want, right? First point, need for equality, right? Opposition, we agree that we need equality. So they're conceding. They're saying, okay, that first argument, government, we agree. We need equality. No problem there. But your second argument, that women's colleges are good for equality, we disagree with that. So remember I said sometimes opposition has to be flexible, right? And sometimes government will make a definition or something that surprises them. Maybe you're preparing for a debate about Japan, but instead they say, oh, we want to debate about developing countries, poor countries. That's fair. Poor countries, it's a big group of countries. The other team should know something about them, right? Or maybe you think, oh, we're going to debate around the whole world. And the other team says, no, we want to debate just about Japan. So that's opposition's disadvantage. The government team can sort of surprise them. But this is opposition team's advantage. They can choose what to attack government by. So if government prime minister said, let me explain why we need women equality between men and women. Our society is so unequal. The average salary for women is only 60% of the average salary for men, about. And not only that, if you look like in parliament, how many women representatives? So few. How can this be fair? If women have issues, they can't get the results. We need more equality. We really, really need it, right? Prime Minister is spending 5.5 minutes, 6 minutes talking about need. If opposition does this, suddenly that whole speech, it doesn't really matter very much, right? Because opposition is saying, you're right, we do need equality. Bravo, hear, hear. But you know what? Your plan is terrible. We shouldn't support women's colleges by very definition. Women's colleges are not equal. They're separating women. They're pushing women off into some corner where they learn to be different, not equal. We think women's colleges don't produce better women's leaders, unlike your claim. Because, etc. For example, like Angela Merkel, the Prime Minister of Germany and the strong, most powerful woman in the world right now. Did she go to a women's college? No. You don't need women's colleges for those things. Instead, we think women's colleges are harming women, and this is why, right? So opposition, this is opposition's advantage. Opposition can listen to government first, and then they can choose what part to attack. They don't have to attack everything government says to win the debate. Okay, so to continue, leader of opposition might have a split like this. First, women's colleges hurt women's social development. Second,
Women's colleges.
right? And then the second speaker's point, less diverse. Diverse. Less different things for women to do. Okay, so why do we call this a split? It's the points, right? It's point 1, point 2, point 3, the arguments. Why do we call it a split? Okay, sort of. You split it up into details. You also split between your first speaker and your second speaker, right? Split means divide it up. So you divide up the points. First speaker does these ones, second speaker does that one. That's important. Make sure your second speaker has something to say, right, when you're planning your case. Okay, and then you give your argument. So this is what second speakers do in the debate. First, read. Go. Introduction. Recontextualize the debate. Recontextualize means like you re-explain what's the most important thing in this debate. So if government says we need equality and women's colleges produce better leaders, and opposition says, you're right, we need equality, but no, women's colleges don't produce better leaders. They limit women and they stereotype women. And then second speaker in government has to come up and react to that and do something to help his team, or her team. So she or he have to say, okay, in this debate, we agree on one thing, that we need to promote women. But what opposition doesn't understand is that equality is not the same as absolute total similarity. We're talking in this debate about equal opportunity, equal chances. We're not talking about making men and women exactly the same. That's not what we support. So then you can try and take it back to your side, right, by recontextualizing. That's what that means. Okay, anyway, number 2, rebut the other team's arguments. Number 3, re-support your first speaker's arguments. Number 4, give additional arguments, your part of the split. And 5, summary and conclusion. So you still have your introduction, you have your signposting of rebuttal, and then you have your rebuttal, you have your signposting of your team's arguments, and then you re-support, and then you give your own argument, and you have your conclusion. And finally, reply speakers. First, introduction / recontextualize the debate. Second, organize the whole debate around 2 or 3 main clashes or questions. And explain why your team was more persuasive in resolving these clashes. So for example, you can have topical clashes. Clash 1, educational quality. Which is better for women's education? Co-ed colleges or women's colleges? Clash 2, socialization of students. Which helps students get into society better? Co-ed colleges or women's colleges? And finally, message to society. Which sends a better message about the importance of women? That would be one way of organizing. Another way, clashes over stakeholders. What are stakeholders? Stakeholders are important groups of people. Who is this motion important to? It's important to students and it's important to our whole society. That's what stakeholders are. So that's another way of organizing. You sort of have to think about the debate. You have to think about how to organize it. So who's this debate important to? Well, obviously it's important to women because most homemakers are women. Also, who else is it important to? Husbands, maybe. Does it make family relationships more equal or more fair or better in the end? And then important to society as a whole in terms of the practical effects on the economy and the future of the country, something like that. So you can organize your clashes in this debate like that. It's important to women, it's important to men, and it's important to the future of our country. So it's sort of like reorganizing it. That's something in this practice debate, demonstration debate, I don't think either team really did very well. I think both teams in your reply speech, you rebutted and then summarized your own points, but you didn't actually reorganize the whole debate. So that's something that you can try to do in the future, you guys. If you're a reply speaker, try to say, well, okay, in this debate, what's really the most important issues, the clashes? Sort of recontextualizing at the beginning. That's almost the same thing. It's like saying, well, this team had these points, this team had those points, but together, what's really most important for us to talk about? That makes a really strong reply speech. It makes it different from what was said before, but makes it have impact on what was said before. Okay, and then finally you make a final appeal, like a conclusion, right? So please vote for women's rights, vote for team government, or please vote for women's rights, don't vote for team government. They're against women's rights, opposition is really for women's rights, something like that, right? Okay, that's the end of the lecture part.